Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I am Angela Love-Zarenka with Lactation Education Resources, and we are very happy that you have joined us today to talk about setting up your private practice with Nikki and Nikki. So I'll hand it over to Nikisha. Hi, Nikisha.
Hey y'all. Hey. All right, welcome back. Thank y'all so much for being here. Happy IBCLC Day.
Woohoo!
Woo! Exciting time. Listen, this is my, I don't know, fifth or sixth one, and it never gets old. I'm really, really excited to see people celebrating us and the work that we do. And I'm really, really thankful to be in this work, especially with you, Nikki.
Oh, thanks, Rain.
I am Nikisha Killings. I am private practice lactation consultant as well as a diversity and equity strategist with LER. And I am co-good troublemaker with my dear friend here, Nikki, with our company, Nikki and Nikki Lactation Career Consultants. We are brought to you today by, of course, LER, the unmatched LER. So thankful to be here. Nikki, tell the people about yourself.
Hey, folks. Happy IBCOC Day. It is still up in the air how long I've been in IBCOC. So thank you.
Wow.
Maybe 3 years. But I appreciate y'all. I am Nikki Hunter Greenaway. I'm also known as Nurse Nikki. I'm a family nurse practitioner and an IBCOC in private practice in New Orleans, Louisiana. Um, and I'm happy to be here with y'all to spring into private practice. Um, we love to have y'all questions. Like we really, really want to hear from y'all, and I'm sure that y'all are fired up and ready to go with all the questions. But first, let's do a quick check-in. Nikisha, how are you in Florida?
Hmm. I got a smile. So, I think I'm doing pretty good today. I do. I think that there are lots of things to be in a negative space about, but there are also many, many things to be thankful for. And so today I choose to sit in gratitude for me and mine. How about you?
I'm awesome. It is a little smidget of chill in the air, more than we like in New Orleans. You know, we can tend to like our 70s and humidity, and today it is 50.
That's
So
cool.
for us, that is a bit much. It's a bit much for March. So, but we are fine and we are blessed and not stressed. So, y'all
Yeah.
tell us how y'all are feeling in the chat. Let us know where you are from and how you are doing in your part of the world. Now that we are international, we want to hear from y'all.
Absolutely. I think being in Florida and also living in Southern California for the last couple of years, I have come to the conclusion that I definitely suffer from seasonal affective disorder. Is
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a mild case, but a case nonetheless. I am absolutely really affected by the weather. And so sunny days just naturally make me feel a little bit better. And so I'm thankful that today is a
Yes.
sunny day where I am, and the warmth, it just really feeds my spirit. And I encourage all of us who spend our days in front of these screens to get out and take a walk and get some fresh air, even if it's cold where you are. It will do a
Mm-hmm.
world of difference. I have to tell my kids, just could you put down the device for a moment? Let's take a walk. Let's take a walk. It's really great for their eyesight too to have to focus on things in the distance and not so close. It works. It takes a lot of work to look at things close up. So if you and your family can get out and just look off into the distance a bit, it's good for you and your mental health and your eye health. I learned that recently from their optometrist. But yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, today we are here with a super exciting topic. Sorry, I thought I lost you all. I had something on my screen that was not good, indicating that I was no longer with you all.
Oh, we're here.
That was not good. Do I want to reload the site? No, no, I don't want to do anything at all till this is over. All right. Today's topic today is, first of all, the month. This month we're talking about springing into practice, right? And so today we're going to talk about starting your private practice. For anyone who's interested in just launching out there, casting your net into the world and deciding, I'm going to go out on my own or with a friend or two. I'm going to make this happen. I'm no longer going to work for an institution. I'm going to be an independent provider. We're going to talk about that. And then next week, we'll talk about what it looks like to run a thriving practice to include hosting support groups. And we're really excited about talking about some of the new and innovative ways folks are reaching out and running support groups that have been effective in this time of virtual support. And so we hope you'll join us on the 17th for that. And we'll talk about it a little bit later at the end of the show as well. But for today, listen, last time we met on intimacy, I had to think about it for a second. Y'all were vocal. You had lots of questions. You were not afraid to drop them into the chat. We ask you to have that same energy today. Please don't be afraid to drop any questions that you have in the chat. They will guide the conversation. We'd love to hear from you and talk back to you so that we're not just talking to one another. But if we are to begin at the beginning, when someone is first thinking about starting out, launching out, whether they're brand new or if they've been just working for institutions, what are the first things folks need to think about when they're launching out on their own? What do you think, Nikki?
Be legit from the beginning. Let's make it legit.
Is that where you want to start? Because that,
Yeah.
that's uncomfortable for me. I've been illegitimate, y'all. I'm just confession today.
Be legit from the beginning with the IRS, state and federal level. Because a lot of times we go into our businesses and we think, you know what, I love breastfeeding. Like, this is the best thing, you know, I want to make it a business. I want to help families. So you take a little change over here, you take some coins over here, you know, you take some things over here. And then you want to do it on another level, maybe receive some grants. But if you backtrack, we haven't quite laid the foundation yet. And a lot of times, in order to accept some of these grants, you need to have a foundation. You need to create a business structure. All right. When you hear these words, you hear like business structure, you hear entity. You are the entity, right? Your business is this entity. Now, what type of entity is yet to be unknown. It all depends on if you want to do it by yourself, if you want to have a partner, if you want to be a collective, different things like that. So we want to hear from y'all. Who has started a business and what type of business, what type of entity have you started? So there are things like sole proprietorship. So sole proprietorship is like, it's just you, but along with sole proprietorship comes with liabilities and personal liabilities, right? So that kind of stuff, you know, ends up on you, and you can lose your home and your assets. Or LLC, or maybe you're a professional LLC, or maybe you're S Corp, or things like that. We wanted to hear from you in the chat. What type of business entity, or maybe you're just starting out and you're like, I don't know, this sounds like Greek to me. And then for other countries, I'm not as familiar with business entities in other countries, but I think that it could be somewhat similar of when you're starting a business.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. You know, full disclosure, well, maybe not. No, full disclosure. I cannot neither confirm or deny that I was riding dirty for a couple of years. All right. I may have been illegitimate, just out there showing up, helping people, and not necessarily documenting it with the government. I'm not committing to whether or not that happened or not. I'm just saying, hypothetically, there are some of us who do that. So my dear friend here, when we connected early on, I heard her give a talk about the business structures, and it somehow all of a sudden became a little less scary to me. Like, oh, is that all I need to do? I can do that. I can go legit. Right? I can go legit, y'all. And so I'm thankful to this day for that advice. I am still legitimizing something, truth be told. However, it is really, really important that you do this so that it doesn't come back to hurt you or your clients or your family later. We got some check-ins. Where are folks? Folks are coming in from all over the place before we go too deep.
Yeah.
Shout out to Atlanta, Montgomery, also known as the Gump. Yes. Ohio, California, PA. Hey, y'all. Connecticut, North Carolina, Canada's in the house. New York City, St. Louis, Chicago. Thank you all for coming through today. All right, we got a question. Ooh, Nikki, we're starting hard. You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Where is the question?
You know, let's check.
Oh, right. On the range, same place.
Right. Is it possible to have your own private practice and to travel to different underserved communities as well? I can actually answer that. I can answer
Oh,
that.
okay, go ahead. Go.
As a male spouse who has traveled and moved quite a bit, yes, absolutely. You should investigate what business structure makes the most sense for you. It may work well for you it to just be a sole proprietorship because you are the business that is moving around and serving people in different locations. That is what I did first because of that very reason. Before I got established and settled in a place, and then I chose another structure that made a little bit more sense for me. But absolutely, thank you for that question. I hope that makes sense. Do you have thoughts on that, Nikki?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. And I want to point out and we can both stress to speak to the importance of invest in a small business attorney. If even if it's for that consultation at the beginning, because a lot of people are like, well, they're so expensive. Now, there's some you can go through your SBA. You can go through SBA.gov, which is Small Business, I think Administration.
It is.
SBA, Small Business Administration.gov, and they have tons and tons of resources for you. But then there are certain entities within your community that are small business attorneys. Go ahead and get that consultation and just ask them about your what type of entity you should be based on how you're set up right now. Invest in that now. What can happen in the future is that you may get yourself in a little conundrum. And then you need the services of an attorney. And I promise you, it's going to be more expensive. So go ahead and invest in, because we are not, as much as I would love to think that of myself as a business savvy person, I got my information from people they specialize in it. That's their lane. This is not my lane. They didn't teach me this in nursing school. They sure don't teach us this as IBCLC. There's nowhere on this test about entrepreneurship. So go and invest in that first step in talking to an attorney. Now, how can you register for your business? You go to your Secretary of State and you register online with your Secretary of State. And it will go on there and it'll say, start my business. And you will go in there. But first, you have to figure out what type of entity you are first. Then you can go there and put in your information. So attorney, then registering online. And Angela has some information for our international folks.
Yes, so there's someone in the UK who has a few questions, and so they are asking about how to set up the system in their country. And so, one thing I can say is that it really does depend upon your geopolitical region as far as whether or not you're allowed to, who is allowed to actually practice as a healthcare professional in your region, in your country, in your jurisdiction. And so I do recommend that you check with those national organizations, and the best way to find out what to do, how to do, is to reach out to the lactation consultants who are in your community already. Now, I will say that some people might be a little hesitant to tell you what to do and how to do and give you that information because they feel like they're training their competition. So it's really helpful to be kind and just to inquire and find out. And sometimes you can find out on some of the national websites as far as whether or not you can. And or like, for example, in Europe, they have ELACTA, which is the European Lactation Consultant Association. So I would highly recommend, taking a look at ELACTA to see what some of those resources are in Europe. In Australia, they have the Australian Breastfeeding Association. So, I mean, there are different groups all around the world. And the best way to find those groups is through the International Lactation Consultant Association website or ilca.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. That's great input. It is wise to check in with other folks who were in our specific doing our specific work near you to see what they're doing or what works best for them. I imagine many of you are tuned in today because you do work similar to what Nikki and I do, and you want to know what has worked for us. So as she mentioned, you want to make sure you go to your state to register your business in whatever entity that you have learned or decided that you want to pursue. Again, through talks with tax accountants or an attorney can help you really hone in on what makes sense. You can also do your own research online if you feel comfortable doing so. There's tons of websites that talk through the differences, and even a wizard that we can drop a link to. Nikki, can you share that link, or do you want me to grab that?
Oh, the quiz.
I'll share. There is a quiz or wizard that walks you through the best structure depending upon what your priorities are as a business. After you've established said business, you will be informed about what the fees are for your state, and they vary widely. I definitely was very hesitant to start an LLC in California because the maintenance, the upkeep of said LLC or said business structure in California was way expensive compared to what it is in a state like Florida. There's also, differences in state taxes varying widely. So you want to make sure you investigate not only what feels right, but what may end up being best for you in terms of payout. As our friend Nichelle says in the comments, you want to secure the bag, secure it. So you want to make sure that the money that you're making is done so in a fiscally responsible way and secured so that nobody can come to take it later. And so someone's asking about an EIN, that's an employee identification number, or a tax ID number. Those are the same. And both of those are gotten through the IRS. So then we leave our state systems where we establish our business structure, and we go and get a number, which is essentially like a social security number for your business. It registers you with the federal government for those federal taxes. And that is, it's easy. You simply can Google, get an EIN number. It takes you to irs.gov, and it's a simple process. And right away you get that number. You are legitimized in the eyes of the federal government as an organization.
Yep, we popped that in the chat. So a few things that we put in the chat, y'all, is the SBA structure, like launching your business, choosing your business structure. So things that you can look at the pros and cons of each type of structure. Also, it's mycorporation.com, entity choice wizard. You can go through there based on some of your questions and answers. It'll give you which business structures kind of suit your needs, but also they are not attorneys, and I don't have any affiliation with them either, but it is a cool tool to use just to kind of see which ones apply to you. And last but not least, the EIN on irs.gov, you can go there and click to see if you qualify for an EIN, and then you can register one. And it happens, it doesn't take long at all, maybe less than 24 hours. You're going to take that to the bank, literally and figuratively, to go set up your business checking account. Y'all better stop putting your money that you earn in your personal account, because we can't count those coins in the same way. We can't use that as, you can't do your expenses if it's in your personal. You have to separate the two. So check with your local banks to see which ones offer the best business banking. That is, we want it free is really nice, but you do want to do that. So there's a process. So figuring out your business structure, setting up your business on the state level or whatever space that you're in, whatever country you're in, and then going in and registering with getting your EIN number, and then take that to the bank to set up your bank account to get your coins.
To separate your coins. And I think that's a really interesting point for folks like me who operated with sole proprietorship for a while, and so kept the monies mixed because it's one of you're filing it together. It's like me and my business are one and the same. It still is a really good practice to do the separation. It really is good practice for when you grow, for if you ever shift business structures, and also just for accounting purposes, so that you have a clear idea of what your expenses were, what your income was, assets, and how those fall out at the end of the year. How you did. You have a real sense of how you did at the end of the year, and set you up to make better goals for the next year and the next year and the next year. Some of the questions that they ask when you're setting up an entity are, what's important to you? Do you have assets that you need to protect personally? Do you need to make sure that things are separate from your own personal finances? So to say your house is not on the line if you're liable for something, or do you plan to have employees? Do you plan to have, to expand, to offer benefits? These are the types of questions that need to be considered when you're thinking about the type of entity that you should start. And I have found in recent, both originally when I very first had a business that was not lactation related, and then again recently come full circle to deciding that LLC was the best for me. That's been the way that I've gone. FYI, what has worked for you, Nikki, and why?
I have always started, that's the guidance that I received from a couple of attorneys when I first started out, that I should start with the LLC, and it offered the protection that I needed. I have been in partnership with someone before, and I've been by myself, and I've done both of those type of business structures. In my lifetime, I have owned 4 businesses, and I manage 2 right now. So I'm not new to this. However, the varying degrees and the complexities of it all when it comes to the monies, it's still a learning process of all the expenses and tax breaks, cuts, or in taxes, quarterly taxes, and all of that jazz. So that's why you really want those experts, or just paying for that consult at the beginning. Like, how can you set me up so I can manage this myself? It's very, very key to get into with those experts and get in their lane to understand what they do, so you can do it for yourself, even if you don't hire someone to do it monthly, or have that on payroll.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have a question about in what state should you register your LLC if you move around a lot. You have a choice there, especially for me, if you were a resident of one state and then moved to many others but maintained your residency. I recommend that you register the LLC in your permanent state of residence, if that makes sense to you. You always have the option though, and some would probably advise to register the LLC in the state where you actually be doing the business.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Because it becomes really complicated in terms of filing. Every year I had to do a bit of a fight with the state where I was living and doing the work versus the state where I was actually a resident, because they want their coins.
Yeah.
And the states that have the taxes or have the higher fees for the LLCs really are aggressive about pursuing those. So you make the choice that makes sense for you. But if you're not military, if you don't have this grounding affiliation with a permanent state of residence, if you are in fact changing your residency quite a bit, I recommend you choose a state where you will be actually servicing clients and establish yourself there, even if you do tend to move around quite a bit.
Yeah, I actually just had a conversation with an attorney about that, as I'm thinking about practicing in two different states at the same time, under my nurse practitioner license. And he was saying that they can add an addendum on. Now, this is actually an attorney question. They can add an addendum on, but you must also have something in place in the state in which you're residing, even if you started it somewhere else. Because if you get sued in that state where you're providing the service, they're not going to go back to that other state and pull an attorney from there. They're going to have an attorney right there in that state. So, so you might want to think about that, and that's why it's important to write down your questions as you get them in your special circumstance, because that is a special circumstance, and making sure you're covering yourself professionally, but also legally, because if someone had a question about insurance, you do have to set yourself up. You need professional liability insurance. And I think we've touched on this many of time, how
Mm-hmm.
important it is to protect your skill. All
Yeah.
right. That is very important, because you don't think of, like, oh, we're not that clinical, or we're not like doctors, but the information we give can be vital, can be life-saving. So please, and can still go wayward, as we all know. So please protect
Yeah.
yourself with professional liability insurance, but your business entity also needs general business insurance as well. Um, so that's something to look into, because the well-known companies like, and the folks in the United States, like Geico, State Farm, Allstate, all of them offer general business insurance, liability insurance. And they can go like $50, $60 a month.
So liability insurance for the practitioner, which to Nikki's point is different. It varies. It depends upon which hat you tend to wear the most. So Nikki has a different insurance as a practitioner than I do. I have the one almost every lactation supporter has, which is CM&F Group. I think it's CM&F, I think it is, yeah. That every lactation supporter, no matter what level of support you are, if you are, a CBS, CLC, you are able to get liability insurance from them. They just have a lactation specialist level, to my recollection, where you can get liability insurance for yourself, your person, going into people's homes, them coming into your space if they're hurt, if they make a claim against you, and advice that you gave them to protect you from being liable, and up to some pretty reasonable limits, I might mention as well. So that is the one I recommend, hands down. General business insurance is another piece that everybody should have.
We're working on it. We're working on it. It's
Going
especially
legit.
important. I would say this general business insurance is especially important if you plan to rent space. If you have a space, in order to sign your lease, you have to have general business
True.
insurance. They don't care nothing about your liability. They don't care. I mean, they care what you're doing in the space, but they more care if somebody fall down the stairs. And so the business, you need that general business insurance if you're going to be renting space. And a lot of times, even if you're coming into someone else's space, they want to, if you're having a support group, for example, we've been asked before, hey, do y'all have business insurance? And we were like, oh yeah, I'm a nurse, I got insurance. They're like, no, 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 no. Your business insurance. What happened is somebody, one of your folks in your support group, fault. Those are things like that. So keep that in mind if you're going to be occupying space, as we clearly, as some people have let down, open the door from COVID, that people will be congregating. Think about how you want to protect everybody.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I certainly have had to turn down opportunities to meet in different spaces before because of that. The facility being a stickler about that. Angela is sharing with me the LAR knows of other resources for lactation supporters, so she will probably share the names of those and pop them into the chat so that you don't have just one. We like to offer a buffet of options whenever possible, for sure. People working on the CBS want to be legit, helping until they get their IBCLC. Yes, you can absolutely get liability insurance and be legit. You can absolutely establish a business entity. You can absolutely get on the books as an organization, and we recommend that. Before we go much deeper in this direction, I think one of the things I want to make sure, and we'll get to your questions, I see more, that we talk about is protecting your asset, your intellectual property, even before you go into establishing a business, right? And so before you get to calling that attorney and setting it up, you got to have a name. What is this thing? What is this thing I'm trying to have them set up? What is it called? What is its purpose? Who am I out to support? Those are really important things to think about even before, so that you go in with a really clear vision of your intentions for your business and a really clear vision of who am I to serve, what is the support going to look like, and that will only help you when you're trying to legitimize, when you're trying to organize and become official, right? So let's back up a little bit. When you're thinking about a name, we got advice, we got thoughts on this, and we love names. This is a part of the most fun thing. If you haven't noticed, Nikki and Nikki really have a lot of fun with nomenclature. And so we think it's really important that when you're thinking about your organization and who you are going to be, and what face you want to put forward to the community, that you think long and hard and with intention about what you will call yourself. What will this thing be called? What will it say to people when they see it about what I provide, right? And really just put some thought into how it may be perceived, and not just today, but how can I grow and expand upon this in the future, right? If I can't just call it breastfeeding by me, right? I mean, I guess you could, breastfeeding by me, but what about later? What about when the lexicon changes and breastfeeding isn't a term that's being used widely anymore? Or what about, all sorts of things may impact that. And so think about that really early on about what name you want to go with and how that may work as you expand and grow later in time. You have thoughts on naming your organization?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm big on name.
She got excited.
I wanted to find this cool name when I started my business. Y'all, this is my 10th year in business. And I wanted to have a very cool name when I started. And everyone I talked to was like, yeah, it's just Nurse Nikki. It's Nurse Nikki. It's Nurse Nikki. And y'all, when I tell you Nurse Nikki is just, it's stuck. And I just could not give her. I'm like, no, I'm going to call it this, Lotus something. And they're like, no, who is that? It's Nurse Nikki. So really, really thinking about the name that grows with you and also speaks to what you do and who you are and your mission and things like that, but not something that's 8 words. You know what I'm saying? When you think of a name and when you think of a logo and all of that type of stuff, how many colors are going to be, y'all? And I'm thinking about this is my brain hat, my business hat on. When you think about this logo and all these colors, and putting that on a shirt, honey, that's money. You got 3 or more colors. You got to tone it down. So looking at your color board, what's going to be your main 2 or 3 colors? Your fonts. Is it an easily found font? Do you have ownership of that font? Can you use it for professional use and not just personal use? Defont.com. Can all of these things you have to think about, because somebody can come back. And your logo is, do you have the rights to that image? Does that image belong to you? Or did you just find it on a Google search and you put it somewhere into your logo, and you like, and somebody come later and like, no, that was my logo. You don't want these problems, y'all. Y'all do not want these problems. So do the research and do the work now to set yourself up for success. And with those businesses, think about, that's why it's nice, not necessarily to have like a 20-page business plan, but to have just something written down where you're thinking about your vision. When you're in year 1, what about in 5 years? What about 10 years? Where do you see yourself going from there? Do you see yourself offering different services? Or are you waiting for different certifications to come up and putting yourself in different positions? And that's kind of how you pick that name, and go from there.
I would agree. And it's not easy, but I feel like you will know it when you hit it,
Oh,
when
yeah.
you land upon it. It will make sense to you. I went a different approach from Nikki, clearly. My practice is lioness lactation. And it doesn't say a thing at all about,
No, but
about I don't have I was Nurse Nikki. I was
oh my gosh.
No, but that really speaks to me as a person. It speaks to who I am. It speaks to who our
It does.
family is. We've got this running theme of lions throughout our family. And we as a family envisioned where that would go long term and how we would expand upon that brand long term, well into, decades from now, when I'm still, on the other side of helping families one-on-one. And so that's a great place to begin. It's putting great thought into your name, your logo. Think about your elevator speech. I like to say, what are you saying about your organization? People come in and say, well, what is it that you're starting? You gotta. Can you say it in 30 seconds? Can you?
Mm-hmm.
Does it roll off the tongue? Does it make sense? Do they get it automatically? And does your logo also communicate something? And what is that? So think through all that stuff. Make sure you test drive it a little bit. Ask some folks, what do you think when you see this? How does this feel?
Right.
And get some thoughts from other people and not just what you think is super awesome to you.
Right.
I highly recommend. The place we want it to go, or we want to go and make sure that we touch on just a little bit, is in protecting that intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once you come up with that great name, you don't want anybody else to take it. You want it to be yours. So we highly recommend protect your intellectual property. That is trademarking. The name of your organization is something that would be trademarked by the USPTO office. And there are tons of businesses springing up that are happy to do that for you for a more than nominal fee. Going through it yourself directly with the USPTO office is a thing. It's relatively economical, but it also can be quite confusing and cumbersome for an individual. So you can absolutely bring on an attorney to do it for you. Costs a lot more, but you're hands off and you get to just wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, you got your trademark. That's for your name. You can absolutely trademark the logo as well. So that's yours. And then you can copyright, here we go, the materials that you create. Nikki, you want to talk to them about that?
Look, y'all, I have been on some of these groups, and I just have to say I am in awe of the courses that y'all are creating, the documents that you're creating, the things that you like, I just made this and I give it to my clients. You better copyright that stuff. And so please make sure that you're protecting yourself and protecting that content. Some of y'all got apps and books and all these types of things. Make sure that you're copywriting the stuff that you're creating, because it's yours, and you don't want, the last thing you want is for someone to take it. And obviously, copying someone, they say that's the biggest flattery, but it don't feel good. So yeah, like really think about those things. And I know sometimes with social media it gets a little fuzzy and the waters get muddy, because you spend a lot of time on that post and someone goes and takes it. But making sure that people are asking you prior to, and then they're posting it and tagging you and making sure that you're receiving the credit that you're so deserving of, because y'all are making some amazing, amazing content.
That's true. So it is true that as soon as you write a thing, right, as soon as you create a thing, written text, it is yours. It's
Yes.
copyrighted in theory, right? It is
Yes.
yours. However, it is not officially registered with the government until you do that process. And why would I
Mhm.
need to register it officially with the government? Well, in case somebody else starts using it, you have then proof of the date that you began using it on file with the government. It's just a little bit of extra step to prove that you have it um, in use as yours as of a certain date, instead of you having to go back, okay, when did I first make that Word document? I gotta sign it, you would have
Right.
it then on file with the government. So that's what we recommend. We got tons of questions on tons of stuff, but I'm gonna stay in the same arena for a bit. Folks want to know, how do you market? How do you market your business within the community? What do you think, Nikki? You're a pro at this. I'm gonna
Um,
let you
I'm
lead that.
not. So I just go what feels good. I am not the, I do not table. That is my, and I know people love tabling at, you know, community baby showers and church events, and that's just not my jam. Like I feel so useless, and I am not a salesperson. It's very hard for me to say I can do something for you. Like, what can I do for you? So one of the things that I do is, I actually set up baby stations. So when someone is having an event, that's how I table myself and that's how I market myself. So I'm known in my community as the baby station person. I set up areas where people can nurse. I have some, nice lawn chairs and that recline, and I have a little setup of, a big table where I have diaper changing station, and that's what I do. And that's how I might have some cards, and I feel like I'm useful. But other ways, and those you just have to think outside of the box, because if you see everyone doing the same thing, you're like, where do I fit in this? And you may think of it as competition, but y'all, if our breastfeeding rates are what they are, there is no competition. There is none. We're all doing this and we're all working together. So that's why it's really, really important. Nikki and I stress this a lot. Collaboration over competition, always. And that is the best marketing tool. It's everyone uplifting everyone else. And I know there's can be some animosity and beef and stuff like that. And also we have to check people's ethical code that they have, and their feelings about certain things. But when you find somebody you jam with, even though if y'all have businesses, you can still collaborate on things for the greater good, because our problems with maternal health and infant feeding are so grand, and there's so many families that we can touch when we work together. So I think that's one of the best marketing tools is really going to your community and see who is doing the work and say, hey, can we partner on Black Breastfeeding Week? Can we partner on those type on IBCLC Day, and we do a joint post and we uplift IBCLC. So I know y'all wanted me to say the other things, but this is the biggest one. Y'all weren't thinking collaboration, but y'all really should be collaborating more to uplift each other's businesses.
That's a great point. Another piece, if I could back up a little bit, is I think that it's really important when you're creating your business to ask yourself, what hole am I filling in my
Yes.
community? Where's the gap? What can I uniquely add to the offerings that exist already for families? Once you answer that question, the marketing sort of answers itself, right? If you're the
Yeah.
only one who is a tongue tie specialist, if you're the only one who speaks Spanish in your area, if you're the only one who is doing mobile visits, the marketing tells you what it needs. It creates itself. Now I'm the one who comes to you. I'm the
Mhm.
one who can get those ties, taken care of, whatever. I'm the one, yo hablo español, whatever.
Right.
Take that, whatever that gap is that you are filling in your community, that you have been created to fill, market from that perspective. And then however your community is best reached, if that's social media, which it is a lot of the time nowadays,
Hmm.
those in the moms groups, new parenting groups, whatever, if it's there, if it's showing up at certain spaces, if it's making sure that you drop your announcement in the local paper, whatever, though, there, once you have decided what gap you're filling, there is where you start your marketing from that particular perspective.
Absolutely. And finding your niche, whichever way you want to say it. It all depends on you, like likes and dislikes and things that you're really good at and have a passion for. Don't just go in your community and you're like, you know what, there's not a tongue tie IBCLC. Do you know, but do you know something about tongue tie? Do you?
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
That's not your lane. That's not your lane. So you want to make sure that you are really finding something that you're passionate about. Maybe you were an exclusive pumper yourself. That's your experience with it. You've done so much personal research on it, and then that seems to be kind of the clientele that you get, because then people know that you've had that personal experience, so you have the professional experience as well. You are the pumping expert. So you market yourself as, I help exclusive pumpers, and you go and find that group, your market, your clientele that would speak your language. So that's also how you find your lane, is mainly about your professional and personal experience. You go into that, not something that you don't like to do, and things like that. You don't go into
Yeah.
something you don't like to do, but you see the gap. Like, that's not how
No, it's got to be your specialty. It's got to be, you got to find out where your giftings and talents marry a whole in the community and bring those two things together. I wanted real quickly, somebody asked about the two questions I think can be related. Can you, as a CBS or someone who's not an IBCLC, start a private practice? Absolutely, hands down. You can watch our previous shows. We have had the folks from Breastfeeding 365 were on an episode, and many of them were CBSs. And the folks on our episode where we talked about how to become an IBCLC last, we had a couple of folks who had been CBSs who did use private practices or had private practices. Go back and view those. It's a thing. The other question around that, though, is how do you handle competition? And I want to speak to that. Whether you are CBS, IBCLC, whatever you are, if you're coming either new to the area or new to the work, I think it's really important to, as a courtesy, introduce yourself to the folks who are doing the work in your area. And again, this is something I've done a lot of times with all the moves, is I show up and then I start reaching out to all the people who are doing the work, and I say, hey, I'm new here. I'm doing this work. I'm really excited to come alongside you in this work. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing so I can understand how I can support it, right? So that doesn't mean you're working under them. That doesn't mean that you're asking to come in agreement or contract with them, anything like that. It simply means we can support one another as business folks, and I am not here to take anything from you. It's not pie. I'm not here to take your clients. I'm not here to steal anything from you. I'm only here to be another asset in the community, right? To add strength to the amount of lactation support that's available. So that type of language, that type of approach, I have learned tends to go over well. Some folks are still going to be mad that you're there, and that's okay. That's okay.
That's okay. They're not your people. That's not your people.
And you've done your job. You said you've done the courtesy of saying, I'm here. I want to know how we can work together, how we can partner, how I can support the work that's already happening, and then you go do your thing. All right. Either they'll become friend or not, but you have then done the responsibility that you need to do. Again, you're not taking families from them. As you market yourself, please don't think of it as a family has a choice between you or them. Think of it as the families that are meant to come to you will, and that's true. I'm reading. Y'all have a lot of questions, and we're trying to scan through them here. We also, as we're scanning, we also want to know that we have to let you know, of course, this conversation cannot be, all inclusive, exhaustive of all the things you could ever ask on this topic. There are folks out there who do this for a living. We highly recommend Annie Frisbee and the great work that she's doing with private practice, educating folks in private practice. She has a conference going on right now. Nikki and I both featured in it. But she really does have wonderful, wonderful tools, toolkits, books, everything else on starting a private practice. It cannot all be captured in this hour, but we hope that we will do justice to the topic to get you at least a little bit of information and excited about tuning into her resources for more. Let's see. Was there a question about trademarking? I think we did it.
Yeah. The domain name suggested. We have a friend here who suggests a name without a long domain because you don't want to be locked into something that is very long, because it makes it harder. That plays into your marketing, your advertising as well. That makes it harder for you to put it out there, and for people to remember. One thing that I came upon when I was at a community baby shower this weekend was you know, a lot of people are kind of weird about touching now, which rightfully so. um, but having a QR code, so someone can just scan a QR code and your stuff just comes up. And they're like, "Oh, do you have a card on you?" Ask me that any day, and I can say no because I don't. But what I do have is a QR code, and I was like, "Oh, here's a QR code," and I put it up on my phone. They scan it, and then my information pops up on their phone. Because how many of y'all got Rolodexes or places where you keep all these cards? So it's really nice. Or you can have them come upon your social media page, whatever you want to link it to. I find that to be a really quick and effective way to share my information, contactless, and super easy to do.
Yeah, for sure. Someone's asking about if their lactation business also has apparel. Do they have to be two separate businesses? They do not. Your one business can have lots and lots of fun little streams that it covers. So no, those can all be under the same entity. When you're going for a trademarking, those are different trademark classes though. Your apparel versus your business name, and versus a course or whatever that you want to mark. Those will all be
Absolutely.
separated in that way. Someone's asking about, do you create all your policies, paperwork, procedures, and all that before you start your practice? You would never get to start your practice. So it helps to have a foundation. It helps to have a couple different things. You got to know what your care plan is going to be. You got to know what your intake form going to be, your platform for charting and all that before you go in. But you don't have to have it all figured out. You certainly can learn as you go if you have some of the basics already lined up before you help families. Nikki?
Yeah, so I love making my own things, but I also have to figure out like the flow, and it's all based on your flow. So you may go through a visit, and based on how you speak to them, then you can kind of figure out. So find a baseline or just a template of a intake sheet, or a template of your history and physical sheet, examination sheet, and then from there you can go into, okay, this doesn't feel right. Let me shift this a little bit. But I will say our friend Annie Frisbee has a group which we have popped in the chat, uh, paperless lactation, paperless
Paperless
IBCL.
IBCLC.
Thank you. I don't know why I just lost it. This has been very helpful for folks trying to figure out if they want to use the EMR system. And some of the most basic EMRs is Google.
What does
G Suite.
EMR mean, friend?
EMR means electronic medical record, where you're going to keep all this documentation. And I know some people are kind of weird about, like, do I need to document? Absolutely. It was helpful in follow up when you're going back to see this client. Like, oh, I wonder what I wrote. Let me check to see the weight and all this kind of stuff. It's helpful in creating care plans. It's helpful in communicating with providers what you have seen and what you recommend. So it is always help. And here's another thing, as all of my nurses in the audience, if you didn't write it down, you didn't do it. They tell us that from day one. The same is true for any profession where you're rendering a health type service. If you didn't write it down, you didn't do it. Okay.
It's
So please
true.
make sure
Yeah.
you're documenting.
From my peer support days, they also mentioned they also reinforced to us that parents have several years to come back and be like, you jacked up my baby, whatever, to come back and make a claim against you. And so it's super important that you have records of what you discussed, what you advised of them, and how you followed up. And so, yeah, we cannot, we will try not to recommend a particular software, but certainly
Oh,
there are tons of options for you and ways to do that. Woo, y'all are on fire today.
yeah.
A military spouse wants to know how to come up with pricing. I'll take that one. It depends on what the going rate is in your area, right? So you get there, you find out somebody's charging $250 an hour, somebody's charging $100 an hour. Find out what the differences are, why they're so different, and figure out where you fit in that lineup, right? If you find out that you're far more skilled than any of them, then you might be able to be even more, depending upon the income level in that community. But it certainly should be guided by what other folks are charging, even
Absolutely.
if you don't agree with what they're charging.
And it's okay to change your pricing. And it's okay to have feeling of a little guilt associated with it. I know a friend of mine in LA, we talk about pricing a lot. And I've challenged her. I'm like, we're going to go up 30% January 1st. And she's like, nope, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're doing 10%. And I'm like, 10% is not going to pay your cable bill. We have to think about your worth and know your worth and know the services that you give. And this is something that I've struggled with a lot. I was just charging based on lactation when I'm bringing a whole nurse practitioner degree on with me, and I hadn't even tacked that on to my pricing. And we're trying to dictate what's in people's pockets and what they're going to spend their money on. If you put yourself out there and show that you're credible, it'll pay for itself. People will pay for credibility. They'll pay for expertise and results.
I couldn't agree more. It really is important to do that. We have great notes about domains. Someone says they use top level domains, such as not.com, but they use .baby. There's certainly tons of ways you can differentiate yourself. And that's a cool one. So think about that. Yeah, think about that. As you were talking about the long domain names, I was thinking, oh man, you could say, the name of your business is One Stop Breastfeeding Shop. You definitely don't want people to have to type in onestopbreastfeedingshop.com, right? That's a lot. And then your email could be,
right.
Jenny at One Stop Breastfeeding
right.
Shop. It's a lot of characters. It's a lot of room for jacking up spelling.
Also, because some people don't have their domain names that match their business, like myself. My business is called Bloom Maternal Health, but my domain is Nurse Nikki NP. And some people know my story about Nurse Nikki, that it's a popular porn star. So you have to think about those things. And as you're putting it out and how that's going to look when your name comes up and this other person comes up. So do some Googling of the name that you want to do and see if it's similar to other names and see how you need to change your SEO. Don't ask me what SEO stands for, because I don't actually know. But it is optimization of your site, so to make sure your names come up first. In that you want yours to be at least
that's Chandra Matos. That's go through Chandra Matos.
Chandra Matos stuff. We've also popped her business group, which is a Facebook group, into the chat because she has some amazing information, especially about this SEO stuff and capturing all of that.
Search engine optimization. I knew it was going to come to me. Go see her. Yes. Folks are asking about getting on with insurance companies. So we forgot to mention that you were going to go ahead and need to get an MPI. Okay. In addition to your LLC or your EIN, and now you need an MPI, right? So that is a National Provider Index, I believe, or identifier. Changed. Identifier. That is your number that, as a provider, most providers in the U.S. have them. Most physicians, have them. It is a way to search and make sure a physician is practicing in theory, because they don't really check. But it is also used for insurance companies need to know that you have an MPI. That's how they. That's one of the qualifications that's required for you to register with them. Nikki, you want to talk about the process of getting on with insurance companies? I know you've done that dance.
It's not a hard thing. I will say it's a lot of paperwork, and make sure you go through and you answer each question and have the right answer for it and spell things the way that it's on your license. Spelling is important, and using the right names and things like that. So it's a tedious process. Obviously, there are people that can do that for you, but you want to, I think it's nice to go through it's not nice, but I think it's good, like with other parts of your business, to know all of the processes and know how to do them. So when someone else, you know that they've been done correctly, because you can look it over and say, okay, I recognize that. But it is a tedious process, and there's a lot of paperwork involved. But once you in it, you in it. And when it's done and they're like, oh, welcome to the family, the Aetna or whatever, Cigna or whatever family, you're in it. So and think about what you want insurance to do for you, because and that's also how you set your prices as well. Insurance is going to reimburse for this in my area, right? I need to set my prices where it's somewhat comparable for that, especially if people want to get reimbursed. Because if insurance will pay $300, you just set yourself up for $50. Yeah, that's not how it goes. So yeah. What do we have?
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's important to know different insurance companies have different processes, different things they need from you. And I'm forgetting the name of the central place where you sign, where you fill all your information out. It's been so
CADQI, maybe.
one of
But
y'all
they will get you there. It's the credentialing database.
there.
CAQH,
Thank you.
CAQH.
Woo!
Thank
She's
you.
some
That was
extra.
syllable. The consonants.
Angela, voice behind the curtain. Tell us about CAQH. What is that?
It's basically a database of providers. And so they actually will go through and they will make sure that your IBCLC credential is in there. They'll make sure that your liability insurance is up to date. They're going to make sure that all of those little things are all together. And the nice thing about being in that database in the United States is that then insurance companies can go there and sort of like ensure that you're legit. Right.
Yeah.
So they know your MPI number, your EIN number, and everything else. So getting enrolled with CAQH, and it is a multi-stepped process.
Very much so.
Please don't get discouraged. It is also one that has to be reattested every 3 months.
Yes.
So, and they
I'm
send
sorry.
you
I just
reminders.
saw it. They just sent me a reminder last week.
And they send you reminders. They're very kind about it. And they'll even call you as well. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
So Nikki, of course, is an NP, so she's always been able to accept insurance. Those of us who are just IBCLC, depending upon where you live, it may not even be a thing that it's worth your time to explore, quite frankly. So you want to investigate that and see if it makes sense for the area that you are in and the companies that are available to you there. What, y'all want a handout?
What? I'm sure we could think of something.
Y'all want a handout? Okay. People are asking for a handout in the comments. We're gonna work that up. We're gonna work that out. Put some of the top
Give the people
top
what they
tips
want.
together. Hey, we are here in service to you. We are. All right, let's see. Is there any more glaring questions that
We
we
do
missed?
appreciate this engagement. Like,
Whew.
y'all are putting it out there, and we really, really appreciate it. Remember, we do have a part 2 of this next week, where we'll dive more into doing this. And we're also, I mean, y'all can also, post stuff on our social media pages and things like that. And please look into the groups that we put in the chat, because there's tons and tons of amazing gems in these groups about businesses and specific to lactation, of how people are making it work every single day and earning and serving, as my friend Nikki Lawson says, earn and serve, which is super important.
That's real. Listen, so yeah, like Nikki said, we'll be back next week. We'll have tons more information. We'll read back through these questions and answer anything that we forgot. Next week is the same topic. It's thriving, though, a thriving practice. Once you've done all the setting up stuff that we talked about this week, how do you keep going and how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep meeting the needs of your folks? And how do you make it work right now in this virtual time? Again, we'll have special guests. We didn't say the name, but I'll share now. Our special guest is Sterling Grace Simmons, CBS. She is a newer to the field, but doing phenomenal work in Atlanta and on some really savvy at social media support. And so we want to talk about what that looks like in this day and time. Woo! Y'all worked this out. Y'all did. Listen, Angela says you all have specific questions for us. I am at equity@lactationtraining.com. Nikki, how do they find you?
You can contact me on social media, on Instagram, Nurse Nikki NP, and Facebook is the same, Nurse Nikki NP. So please hit us up, and we will try to answer your questions the best we can, because we are pulling from lived experience, not an MBA.
There is that. Please do not take our advice in lieu of the professionals for whom this is their work. Right? We can only tell you what we know. But thank you. That's what we've got. Again, we hope to see you on March 17th to go deeper into running a thriving practice with Sterling Grace Simmons. And then we'll move on. We'll tell you about what's in store for April at that time.
Thank y'all so much. Enjoy your day.
Happy IBCLC Day.